Gary Thornton.
Okay, Gary, where do you live?
Russellville, Arkansas.
Okay, go to Russellville. Ron Paul, you think, is he one of our hopes, or is he our only hope? What do you think?
Well, right now, I mean, since there's a presidential election coming up, I think he's the only hope. He's the only candidate that I see with any integrity at all.
Okay, how about Alan Keyes for his running mate?
Well, I hadn't even thought about that, but Alan Keyes is a good man, and he got kind of kicked out of some previous elections, and so I don't know. I mean,
good guy,
that's up to Ron
Paul.
Paul.
This can be true internationally too. Everybody that supported the war didn't have bad intentions. A lot of people, figured, oh yeah, it is our responsibility, and democracy is important, and all these things, and they went along with it. But I think once again, it's the use of force. And once we compromise on international affairs, all kinds of silly things can happen. Things like first we do business with Libya, and then we don't do business with Libya. Then we bomb Libya, and then we tell Libya, and then Libya says, "Oh, we're going to be good boys," and then we say, "Oh, you're our friends, and we're going to now give them subsidies," and that's what we're doing with Libya. Okay, we're promoting democracy in Iraq at your expense, at the expense of a lot of people dying on both sides, and a lot of people wounded that they don't count very well. But what do we do about Pakistan? Well, there's pretty strong evidence that Osama bin Laden is in Pakistan, and that Musharraf, before 9/11, was, and I suspect still has, strong attachments and ties to the Taliban. And Musharraf is a military dictatorship. He overthrew an elected democracy of that government. So what did we do on this international relations bill last week? We gave Musharraf $300 million of your dollars. So the pretense, this good pretense of promoting, is so silly and so bad. We have a policy with China. I know I'm very sympathetic to Taiwan, and yet my sympathies for Taiwan makes me challenge the current policy, because the current policy said that our policy is a one China policy, and Taiwan might want a referendum to vote for independence and self-determination, and we won't let them. So my suggestion is we ought to be neutral on most of these things, stay out of the way, encourage self-determination, and I think the world would be a lot better off. We would be a lot better off.
Do we keep spending like we're spending?
Absolutely not. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's almost criminal, I think. The way our Congress and our fellow citizens have been throwing our money at everything and anything to get power and to get reelected. And Ron Paul, the more I see and hear of him, consistently, he's been more true to life and consistent with his views and not abusing his position of power.
So how do you feel about Hillary Clinton?
Absolutely hated it. You look around the world, everywhere that has socialized medicine, the people either are apathetic about it because they don't know anything else, or they hate it. And I don't know why, when a lot of the rest of the world is starting to wake up that this stuff, the kind of thing doesn't work, that our politicians are going to force it on us whether we like it or not. And it's ridiculous to think that the government could pay for every man, woman, and child in this country's health care.
Can we afford it? Can we afford it? Is
no.
out there?
No, absolutely not. Well, unless, like Ron Paul says, unless they print more up, and that's not any kind of answer.
The main role for government, especially at the local level, should be that of restraining force. Never initiating or using force to try to mold and change society, but the role of the local policeman is obvious. If somebody's robbing and hurting somebody, the policeman should be there. And internationally, we should have an army to restrain force, but never to initiate the force. And for this reason, the government should have a very, very limited role. We should have a judicial system, but nothing in the welfare entitlement programs, and nothing into the nation building, nothing into the manufacturing of money out of thin air, and then we wouldn't have the need. You know, the argument and debate about the best tax, a lot of people get very upset with me because I'm not a strong enough champion for the sales tax. It's not that I wouldn't do anything possible to get rid of the IRS. It's that I don't want any of those taxes. I want to get a position where we don't need all those taxes and that we can get rid of them. Now, one of my favorite of the founders is Samuel Adams, and he had some advice for us. They had a discussion during the war, and things were going badly, and his advice to the group that he was talking to was not to be very careful and not to leave with a long face. Don't have a long face and allow people to realize that there's a serious problem, because we have to be upbeat. So his advice was to make sure that the leaders of the revolution were always optimistic, and even though he was willing to admit he didn't know the outcome. I think that's important. We have to be optimistic. At the same time, there's one thing that we can do, and I learned this as well from Leonard Reed, is not only should we be optimistic, recognizing you and our limitations, but also recognizing the benefit and the value of being with like-minded people. When I don't go fishing, and I don't go hunting, and I don't go to cocktail parties, and I don't do the things that a lot of people do. I don't go on any junkets, but I do come to places like this because I do enjoy it, and I get encouraged by knowing that there are people like you out here in the country. And that's what we all should do. Where you go, in the next group you start, and the organizations that you join or you're motivated to promote, you have to do it with a sense of enjoyment, of study and understanding. We as freedom fighters have to really do a better job at understanding how the market works and not let the do-gooders get the moral high ground. The do-gooders always seem to gain on us. They're the ones who care about the poor. I'm the one who wants to get rid of the entitlements. And it is up to us to know and understand that.
So you think free speech is being attacked?
Most definitely free speech, all our rights, First Amendment, Second Amendment. It's just totally unreal what's happening to this country.
When Dr. Paul talks about states' rights, what does that mean to you?
It means that the states have a right to disregard any federal law that doesn't pertain to the states. In other words, under the 10th Amendment, the states have the right to judge their own people and pass laws to where they control what goes on in their state. These mandates from the federal government for the states to do this and that and the other, and then the states have to pay for it. Well, how are they going to pay for it? This giant program from the federal government, and without raising taxes. You raise taxes, you hurt the people. The power to tax is the power to destroy. Yes, we do need some taxes, but taxes are so high now, plus everything else, the inflation, fuel, food, you name it. It's just off the charts, and people, elderly people like myself, I don't consider myself real elderly. I'm 60, but you know, I have a limited amount of funds to survive, and basically at the end of the month I've got to decide whether I'm going to eat or am I going to pay my utility bill fully or partially or whatever. I mean, it's just to a point where people are just they have to choose on what their priorities are.
You think that's because of taxes? It's gotten out of control.
Taxes, fuel. That's the biggest scam going right now, is the fuel.
And of course, that's what I see my job in politics, is to make sure. Mises used the term make these ideas palatable to the common people, and that's my job as a politician. is to make sure that my voting record and the Constitution is palatable and understandable, and that they know that it's in their best interest to support either an individual like me or somebody else, or stick with the Constitution. And Samuel Adams also said, the quote that I like, he says, it does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men. That to me says it all. Brush fires of freedom in the hearts of men and the minds of men.
So you think Dr. Paul has a chance?
I think he's got a chance.
Does it matter if he has a chance or not?
We're glad that he has a chance to win, but if he didn't, it's a great opportunity to get this message out to people and to make people aware of these issues.
Okay. So does the situation in New Hampshire give you any concern, or have you been following that questions on the voting?
Right. He got 8% in New Hampshire, but in the last election he got 4th and finished ahead of Fred Thompson and Giuliani. So we feel like that's a good sign. He's supposed to be close in Nevada. So we're just going to keep organizing, keep turning out our voters, and see what happens.
How about this idea of this talk about passing the legislature to hand out money and tax breaks and taxes to jumpstart the economy? Is that going to work?
No. It's first of all, it takes forever to get it. Second of all, it's taking our money from us and then giving some back. And it's, why don't they just give bigger tax breaks in the first place, or get rid of some of the taxation that they have on us?
Remember, I saw the paper yesterday, it was $150 billion. Do we have that money sitting around just waiting to be spent?
No. we're in debt already.
Oh, isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it is absolutely incredible.
I know he's very capable because I've known him for 50 years.
Okay.
When he was in Texas legislature before he became even a libertarian candidate for president.
Really?
So I've known him a very long time. His qualifications have not changed. He's a very consistent man. He's always been the most voted the person, most savings of the voters' money for years and years. He was always number one, saving the voters' money.
I have nieces and nephews that I'm concerned about, and it's one reason that I'm participating in this. Because I'm very much concerned about them and every young person.
We can't just keep spending money and mortgaging our future, that is what you're thinking.
No, in fact, part of our country is already being taken over by foreign people because of the money that we have spent foolishly. We are billions of dollars in debt.
Oh boy.
In fact, I should say trillions.
Yeah.
And we can't pay it all back overnight, so we're in trouble.
Cut spending, like Ron Paul says.
What?
Cut spending, cut out unconstitutional foreign aid.
Yes.
Your name?
Margaret Brugly.
All right, Margaret. So you think Ron Paul is a good man for the future?
Beg your pardon?
You think Ron Paul is a good man for the future?
I think he is the only man for the future.
And this is spoken by a world traveler.
I would say cut spending, cut out unconstitutional foreign aid.
Yes.
And bring all our army that's everywhere else in the world that doesn't need to be there, bring them home. And that in itself would save a lot of cost.
But what do you say to people that are your age that says, I worked all my life, I put the money into the thing, I deserve to have, what do you say to those folks?
What I'll tell you what I said. I heard him say that he's not going to do anything to destroy Social Security.
Okay, this is what Ron Paul has said, okay.
And that he's going to make sure that there's enough funds in there for the older folks that are retiring and need it. But he said, all he said was he was wanting to give the young people a chance to invest their money the way they see it, that it's best for them. And that has attracted a lot of people.
Okay. So what do you think? Is there a way to cut that kind of spending and still take care of our obligations?
Well, I know this. I'm past retirement age, still working. I draw full Social Security, but I have reservations about retiring because probably 2/3 of my retirement income will have to come from Social Security. And will it still be there in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years? And that's a great concern of mine. And what about my children and grandchildren? My children pay it into Social Security, and yet they're not going to see a penny of it the way I see it.
How do we turn this back, do you think?
We return to the moral base that this country was founded on, the Bible, the Word of God.
And what specifically did you have in mind as far as spending goes?
As far as spending, cut out foreign aid. It's very unconstitutional. And there's just a number of areas that could be cut. Of course, in the military area, I'm for a strong military force. But the purpose of the U.S. military is to protect the American people and U.S. property. We've spent over 50 years protecting the North or the South Korean border. And why can't we protect our own borders? We've been invaded, and that's what it amounts to.
So with Dr. Paul's position, you see him saying there has to be the ability to pay the debt. You can't just keep adding debt upon debt upon debt.
Exactly. Our money system is going to fold up. The dollar is worth very little anymore.
And so we can only do that if we rebuild our confidence in our nation, and that's by stop spending so much.
Exactly. We've got to return to the basics found in the Constitution.
Now, I've heard this fellow over there in China that owns, $1 trillion of our money. If he pulls the plug, we're in trouble. But yet, if he pulls the plug, we won't be able to buy his products. So, we're kind of both in the same boat. What do you think about that? Just keep buying Chinese products, or what?
Not at the expense of having to borrow money and create money out of nothing. Like Walmart, and there's a lot of others besides Walmart, but Walmart is one of the worst that I see. Most of the products in a Walmart store are made in China or some other foreign country. And I mean, Ron Paul has said, if I understand him right, that the free market economy is the best way to go. And he says he thinks that things will work themselves out if the government stays out of it.
Now, when we're talking about a free market economy, though, what we're seeing today is more fascism, where the government and private corporations are in partnership, and we don't really have a free market. Is that what you?
Well, I mean, that's pretty accurate. That is very accurate.
So Ron Paul is not saying give these corporations free reign. He's saying have a truly free market system.
That's right.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Okay. So if we continue to ship our jobs overseas, do we have any hope of having work enough to pay the bills in the future? Or?
Not the way I see it. I mean, if you don't have an industrial base anymore, and all the everything's being manufactured overseas, we're at everybody else's mercy.
Ron Paul sees this. He understands that.
And I hope that we can do something about that. I mean, our industrial base is being destroyed. I mean, it hasn't been overnight. It's been years and years, but it's happening, and it's happening so slow. It's kind of like throwing a frog in a pot of water and then slowly putting the heat on him.
That, of course, we can't do if we don't understand where our freedoms originated. If we allow them to assume that government gives us so much of our freedoms and that they own us, whether it's owning us in terms of the taxation or the way they can take us up and fight in wars, the liberal argues, and too often the conservative argues now, that we have to, if we give you a pay cut, we have to pay for it. I mean, a tax cut. If your taxes are cut, oh, we can't do that unless we pay for it. Based on the assumption that everything that you earn belongs to the government and they allow you to keep a certain percentage. That attitude, believe me, has to change if we, expect to win this fight. But we really have to remember where our freedoms come from. And our freedoms don't come from government, as you all know. Our freedoms and our liberties and our life come from our Creator. Government should be very, very minimal. It should be for the protection of that liberty. And then we as individuals have that responsibility to do the very best job to make the system work. Thank you very much.
Now, I heard you make a comment, and this is something I've noticed as well. In the last few years, I've really noticed folks that used to not really point to Jesus Christ as our hope and what we need to focus on. They're starting to talk about this more, and they're saying the political system is important to be involved with, but we need to understand it goes beyond that. Have you guys noticed that people are more willing to speak out in public and talk about their faith in regards to this political process in particular?
Yeah, I believe so. They took the Supremes, took God out of the schools, and now we have unbridled children committing crimes that back when I was a child was never heard of. We always had prayer in school when I was a child. Even when I graduated is when things started to change.
What year was that?
64.
Okay.
And so, to me, this country was founded upon a Christian principle. And it's been slowly eroded away to now it's more humanism.
All right, so Dr. Paul doesn't wear his Sunday cross on his chest. He says he's a Christian, but he's not going to use that as a, bully pulpit, or he uses a better word than that. Do you think that's wise, or should he be out there holding the Bible up and carrying his big Bible to church and things like that?
Well, I don't know. I think
the ex-governor of Arkansas, who, as I seen in one debate, said he's the only candidate that had a theology degree, and is I read he's an ex-Baptist preacher, and he's thumping that Bible and beating that to get the votes from quote Christians, evangelicals, and especially, and to me he's a demagogue, as most of the others are.
Apostate preacher.
Amen, brother.
He's a CFR poster boy.
Council on Foreign Relations.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Every other, from what I've read, every other candidate on the Republican ticket is a CFR member.
So
and some other organizations.
This is why Huckabee has risen so much in the polls. Do you think he's been propped up?
Sure.
He's been put in there? Okay.
Well, I think the other Arkansas governor that ascended to the presidency was handpicked, and had been groomed for some years before that, for that position.
See, this is the thing about when I came to Arkansas in 2000, I asked people about that, and they said, we here in Arkansas didn't vote for him. And I thought that was interesting, because y'all had known about what he was about with his 2 terms, or how many terms he served, the 12 years as governor. They knew what Billy was about.
Sure. Well, the powers that be just select them and put them in, and with the fraud and with these voting machines nowadays, and I haven't heard the recount in New Hampshire, but I know there was a recount.
It's still ongoing, I think.
And these voting machines are easily, who was it said was it Joseph Stalin said it's not who votes, it's who count the votes.
That's right.
Okay, and
that's right.
Just like our these communists in the past, they've got it pegged how to subdue us, and organized religion. Karl Marx, which was actually a pen name, but Karl Marx, who was credited with Engels writing the Communist Manifesto, was quoted as saying, "Religion is the opiate of the people," which he was saying it's a means of control.
Okay. And it was brought forth even more when Nikita Khrushchev took his shoe off in the United Nations and beat it on the counter and said, "We will take over this country and never fire a shot."
Okay, there you go. All right, now let's talk about that voting fraud potentially. Have you talked to anybody that's willing to step up and be a precinct watcher, be a watcher of the actual all day? You know, you have people that volunteer to do the. Have you talked to anybody that's willing to do that?
I haven't. No, I haven't.
Do you think it's something
important? I would volunteer, but my occupation, I'm a trucker, a long-haul trucker on the road.
Does it frustrate you, though, when you see people like Bill Clinton walk around with a big Bible and got tears in his eyes? And, in other words, it seems to me like this election is really showing how co-opted the whole Christianity concept is. Bill was bad, but then George W. came in on the Christian platform, and then it was 2003 that he said, I think it was, 2003 that he said that all religions, lead to heaven.
Yeah. He's whatever expedient for them to do. Whatever works for them, they'll use it. Okay, and my philosophy is the only time you can tell a politician is lying is when his lips are moving. Okay, Dr. Paul's not a politician. He's a physician. He's an American citizen.
He's a statesman.
That's right. He's a statesman. He wants to go up there and do his term. And I don't think if he does win, that he would do one term and he would not rerun. That's the way it was designed. Go up there, do your thing for one term, go home. Let somebody else run. But we have people that's in Congress been there all their adult life. They've sent their children and grandchildren to college off of the salaries they make, which they raise their own salaries anytime they feel like. Wish I could do that.
Now, those of us that are in agriculture, we're very concerned about national animal ID and seeing that this is kind of the last point where they need to take over. They need to take over our food supply, and it seems like that's what's being aggressively pursued now, is they want to get control of the food supply. Are you aware of that?
Oh, I'm very aware of that. I think the government's got their hands in pretty much everything.
Now, my description is I've got the 20 chickens in my backyard. I have to put a tag in each one of those chickens. But Tyson has a house with 10,000, and Tyson needs one tag for the entire 10,000 chickens in that one house. And that sounds to me like corporatism.
Well, sure it is. It's it started way back when, even back in the Clinton era. Because Clinton and Tyson were good friends. So, that's really nothing new. It's just it's another nail in the coffin of the little guy.
You got to stand against it. So, Ron Paul, you think, is he one of our hopes, or is he our only hope? What do you think?
Well, right now, since there's a presidential election coming up, I think he's the only hope. He's the only candidate that I see with any integrity at all.
I started in the early 70s as a Republican. I was a candidate for the Washington State House of Representatives as a Republican candidate, District 1, Position 1 against Nancy Rust. I was on the same ballot with Ronald Reagan and George Herbert Walker Bush. I'm always a Republican, will continue to be a Republican because we have a Republican form of government and our Constitution guarantees it.
What do you think the Republican Party has done in the last few years?
The Republican Party has brought such great shame to itself and to the nation that it's almost an embarrassment to be a Republican, but with Ron Paul we can turn it around.
All right, there you go.
When you look at our culture today, our society today, how do you think we would do if we went into another major depression like what occurred then?
It's difficult for me to say, but I hope we don't go through it. Because it was bad enough back then, but I think it might be worse now because people have been so conditioned to having so much.
Okay. And they expect the government to give them whatever they need.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the government, I think, won't be able to give it to them.
Yeah. Tell me again about your experience there in London. You said you met a gentleman that was constantly going over to Brussels, and you asked about that. Tell me about that again.
Well, he was making so many trips that I got curious, and so I finally asked him, because I thought if he was going to make so many trips to Brussels, why didn't he go over there to live? And he finally ended up telling me that he was working for the common market, and I had never heard of it. So I asked him, well, what is that? And he said, well, it's to help people to make a living, and that it was working.
What year was that?
It was in summer and fall of 1948.
Okay. So you said you never heard about this in the public until when?
Oh, it's sometime, I'd say probably mid-50s, somewhere along there.
Okay. So that was more of a stealth thing. They were doing it kind of undercover, trying to unify the whole European continent.
I would say that, and I have often wondered if that fellow at the boarding house probably didn't even, I wonder if he was doing something wrong in telling me about it.
Do you think that's what they're setting up here in the United States? They're
Definitely. Definitely. It's the same sort of thing. Of course, there's some differences because here they're working with America and Canada and Mexico, and over there it was with Europe. But it's my thinking that when it's all set up here, we will finally, eventually include South America, and then we will combine with Europe.
Okay.
Because it's all supposed to be a one-world thing.
What do you think Ron Paul's feelings is about the North American Union and such things?
I have no idea. I have no idea what he thinks. My guess is that he knows as much or more about it than I do.
Okay. So he is not a globalist. He doesn't want the United States to be part of a global community. He believes in sovereignty of our nation.
Definitely.
What changes have you seen over the years? You said you were a teacher?
Yes.
What changes did you see through your career as a teacher in the American educational system?
I'm not sure what you mean.
In other words, have we come to a different point of the way we teach children today than we did?
Oh, definitely. We've gone downhill. We've gone downhill all the way. I saw the first time that I saw anything about that was in 1950 or 59. Somebody came in here and held a meeting, and the teachers were taught to bring in I've forgotten the name of it, but it dumbed down the math program.
Oh, okay. Okay, the new math type of thing, okay.
Yes, and it's been called fuzzy math and everything else.
That was back in 59, you said, 58, 59?
Yes, here in Fort Smith.
Wow.
Because, see, I taught in Fort Smith for 38 years.
What was your subjects?
My subject was home economics.
Okay.
In fact, clothing. There were only 2 schools in the state of Arkansas that specialized in at Northside High School, where I taught. We had a clothing teacher, a foods teacher, and a home management teacher, and I was the clothing teacher all that time.
Okay. Have you had people come to you more recently and ask you about sewing, learning how to sew, wanting to know how to sew? My wife has people all the time asking her, and it's not taught in school anymore.
No, it isn't taught, but people don't ask me. I think it's because ready-made clothes are so on the market so much. Mm-hmm. But see, back then, people liked to sew, and they just did it, but they don't anymore.
Because we're dependent on foreign places to ship the clothes into us now.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So when did you first start teaching?
Oh, it was about 1945 or 6.
Okay. Okay. So you taught all the way up into the 70s then?
Oh, wait a minute. I started teaching here in Fort Smith in 1943, but I had taught a couple other places before that.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you were teaching during World War II then?
Beg your pardon?
You were teaching during World War II?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. As you look at what's going on around us in the media, do you feel like there's a lot of propaganda that we are being told what they want us to think? And did you see that back in World War II at the time?
I didn't know enough. I really didn't know enough about what was going on at that time, but I certainly see it now.
Okay.
But yes, that's what we did back then. We helped each other if we needed help. The government didn't help us.
Even though you came out of Roosevelt's New Deal and such, it was still individuals taking care of individuals.
More or less.
Okay.
But see, I was born before Roosevelt became president.
Okay.
In my early years, we definitely took care of ourselves. We didn't have a government to depend on, but we do now. The government is taking care of us more and more as time goes by, and they are bringing us into what I would call servitude for them.
Okay.
We are serving the government instead of the government really helping us.